WGN political analyst Paul Lisnek.
Hi,
Hello
guys.
to you.
Paul, good to see you.
Okay, so we know that this is a referral, a
Right.
recommendation, not charges. So how much weight, if you could explain, does it carry with the Justice Department when they make a final decision?
Well, so first of all, Lourdes, it's a referral because Congress has no power to do anything. They can't charge anybody with anything. So that's all they could do. Secondly, it sort of puts DOJ between a rock and a hard place because had they not made the referrals, then the attack on the committee would have been, you see, this was all political, you didn't do anything, kind of the Mueller thing when he, in the end, he didn't, sort of resolve some charges and people sort of said, what's the point? They would have faced that. So I think they had to do it. But then on the flip side of that, if you're DOJ, you don't want this to look political. It's why Merrick Garland appointed a special prosecutor in this case. But that being said, now, because if they do indict on these actual 4 public things that, and by the way, I'm saying 4 public items on the list because there's 2 more that are in the, I left it on my desk, they're in the 150-page executive summary of the report.
Not part of the ethics, but part of the criminal program.
Exactly right, which they are simply suggesting to DOJ. But now Merrick Garland faces the issue of saying, see, you're political because you're just doing what Congress tells you.
Does it speed things up for the Justice Department, or does it affect the timeline at all?
So, Lourdes, DOJ does its own investigation. So what the House has been doing, and there's been some discussion in the past months of, have they been sharing, what are they not sharing? But the Department of Justice is doing its own investigation. Now, what they will do when this full report comes out Wednesday, expected to be about 1,000 pages or so, they will go through it, not for the conclusions of it, they will go through for the evidence and see what evidence they already have, what they don't have, but that's what they're going to go for. It's going to be about the evidence as they are putting their own case together aside from anything that Congress recommends they do.
So a lot of focus has been put on the criminal elements in this and what the referrals will ultimately look like here. But what about the ethics investigations and the focus for 4 members of Congress, people like Jim Jordan?
So for some reason, the committee decided today that their message was going to be about their recommendations regarding former President Trump. And they left it there. They did mention John Eastman, the lawyer who some say sort of propelled Trump into doing certain things. That was criminal, and they kept it there. With regard to the members of Congress and other players involved, Jeff Clark, because there may be other criminal referrals coming on other players. On Congress, though, like Jim Jordan and Kevin McCarthy and some of the players there, it appears what they're going to do is recommend that the House Ethics Committee take that up. Now, of course, Republicans take over the House in January. However, the one committee that has an equal number of membership to it is the Ethics House Committee. So there is a chance that with equal representation on that committee, maybe they will do something with it, but in the past, the House Ethics Committee really isn't known for its fine work. They're not very strong, so we'll see what happens.
Okay, in the meantime, let's talk about former President Trump, because he's already reacting to this recommendation. How does this impact anything that he may or may not do, or sort of how he goes about his business every day?
Well, look, there's nobody better at marketing and shaping the story than him. He tweeted, sorry, he didn't tweet. He truthed today, Truth Social today, the fact that I don't know why they're doing this. I called for there to be law enforcement there. That's in dispute. I did tell everybody to go home. Arguably, that happened many hours later. So he's going to, kind of put the story in the light that he wants to put it, which his supporters want to hear. But the bottom line to it is, I think the reason he has announced his run for president is because at any time, if DOJ takes the step of indicting him, and I think that's more likely than not, I don't know on which charge, but more likely than not, is simply he can say, you see, I announced my run, they're after me, it's a witch hunt, it's all political. One other comment on that, as much as today was all about January 6th, I think Merrick Garland, we may find that in the end, he may just be going after Trump for the Mar-a-Lago document situation. Why? That is the easiest one to prove. I mean, everything else is got a lot of problems and a lot of baggage with it. We should also note that the 4th of the charges they made public today, the insurrection, we haven't heard those charges. That's a Civil War law, and we have not heard charges brought against anybody since that time, but these are very different circumstances right now. The reason they brought them was because if he should be charged and convicted of insurrection, he would be prohibited from running for federal office again.
That was going to be part of my next question, but back to this way that Donald Trump turned this around. He says, this is going to make me stronger. This is going to be something that my base is going to kind of rally around. I mean, that's what worked before when there was an impeachment. Do you see any elements of that same dynamic still at play here?
I think there are millions of supporters that the president has in our state, around the country, that are just absolute diehard. I mean, there's really nothing. He's got the famous phrase, "I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and I wouldn't lose any supporters," and I think there's truth to that. So even today, just the emails I've been getting and seeing regarding the hearings, the people who support the former president, just there's no getting through. It's all a witch hunt. It's all made up stuff. So they're not going anywhere. But I don't think that's what the mission is. I think here, Congress's mission, if you can accept the fact that they're not being completely political about it, is to say a wrong has been done, and it has to be addressed. You can't just go after the minions, these 800 people that the federal government's been going after. Somebody planned this thing. Somebody called these people together. Now, whether that's President Trump or whether it's other people around him, like John Eastman and Mo Brooks and some members of Congress, that's what this report is going to tell us on Wednesday.
Right.
Okay. We've got maybe like 30 seconds left, but I know there was big news today that came in on Title 42, a brief decision made by Roberts. Is this an indication of what the final decision may be like?
Yeah, so Title 42, which is the one that is the Remain in Mexico policy, which was going to go away on Wednesday, and which nobody was excited about. I don't know how ready the government is. But briefly, what Chief Justice John Roberts did today was he said, no, we're going to keep Title 42 in place. Biden administration, you have until Tuesday at 5 o'clock to get me a brief and tell me what you want. So there are those who think, oh, we now have this long hold. Roberts could lift this thing as early as tomorrow night or in the coming days. In the meanwhile, I think the Biden administration is doing what they can to kind of gear up at the border and handle the increased numbers that we're liable to face if and when Title 42 is lifted.
All right.
Paul Lisnek, you were here at the beginning of the panel meeting today, giving us analysis, and you're here again tonight. So
back in the morning
thanks
show.
a lot.
The man doesn't sleep.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Paul.